Good afternoon and hello, everybody, and welcome into Senior Living Live. My name is Melissa. As always, we thank you so much for taking your time to be with us today. We've got a great topic on tap for this September webinar called Parents Refuse Senior Living. Now what? Really good question. Wanda Moen, you see her there. She is with the Arbor Company and she is our guest presenter today. We're proud to have her as a part of our team. She is the perfect person to discuss this topic. She not only answers this question on almost a daily basis, but she also has experience with this in her own personal life. Wanda will be available to answer all of your questions at the end of this webinar. All you have to do to be a part of the conversation, it's really easy. Scroll down to the bottom of your screen where it says Q&A, click that button, type out your questions there, and I will be happy to read those to Wanda at the end of the webinar. We expect this will last about an hour, so everybody settle in. Wanda, it is so good to see you. Thank you for being a part of this webinar today. Really looking forward to the great information you have on tap for us. The webinar is all yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melissa. Like you said, I'm really excited to talk about this topic today because I don't think people really understand the generational differences in how we speak to one another. So we're going to talk about the topic of you talk to your parents about senior living and they did not respond the way you thought they would. Now, what are you going to do? So we're going to talk about how you do that conversation in a different way. So I want to take a step back and talk a little bit about what we do when we start looking for senior housing for our loved ones. We notice a change, right? So you're visiting or hanging out someday, or they've gone to the hospital again for another reason, or they've fallen and it scared you, right? Most seniors take that in stride and they think it's a part of everyday normal life. You see it, however, as a giant concern, and you hop on Google. You know, we want to be informed people nowadays. We want to have all the information at our fingertips, and Google's actually given us that opportunity. And so we start to Google, and some of the topics that we Google, I wrote them down, is when do you know it's time for senior living? What's a typical senior living like? What's a typical day? What's the difference between independent living and assisted living? How much is it going to cost? And who pays for it? And what should I be looking for? And what are some good questions that I should be asking when I visit senior living? We go into an educational mode because we want to be as informed as we possibly can before we start that conversation with our loved ones. And some folks actually start looking. They go visit different senior housing communities and they kind of narrow it down to 2 or 3 that their loved one can choose from. And all these things that we do, none of it is wrong. It's not wrong at all. It's how we feel. You know, I've talked to many families that say, we'll pick a few and then we'll just tell her which one or him, which one they're going to. And typically that process takes a really long time. And there's lots of challenges that occur when we look at seniors and we say, we've got some great options for you. You got this one or this one, now pick. And when we start to have that conversation, the talk sometimes goes like this. You start by saying, I've noticed some changes and I'm really worried about you. And I've gone and done a bunch of research. And here's what I found. I found this place that has an on-site restaurant. It's got a pub even. There's housekeeping there. They're going to come in and clean for you. You don't have to drive anymore because they've got transportation. There's a bus, there's a car. They'll take you to your doctor's appointments. They'll take you shopping, out to lunch, and they're going to do all your laundry. And there's activities there too. You know, you can learn to paint, you can take a dancing class. You love bingo. They have bingo. They've got bridge clubs, book clubs, you name it. And by the way, there's nursing staff there too, should you need any assistance. What in reality, what our loved ones actually hear is, we don't think you can cook anymore. We don't think you can clean anymore. You can't drive anymore. We don't think you can do your own laundry anymore. And we don't think that you do anything fun anymore. And basically, you just can't take care of yourself anymore. And I don't want to do it. And you're just really old. And so we have really good intentions when we start these conversations with our loved ones, and we're excited about the next chapter in their life. But that's not what they hear. They hear all the negatives that there are out there. And here's why. The reason why is that there are generational differences. Most of the time, we are baby boomers looking for our loved ones that are the silent generation. Baby boomers, and this, don't shoot the messenger, this is what Google classifies the personalities of baby boomers and the silent generation. Baby boomers are demanding. We want what is the best of the best. We're self-assured. We're confident in our abilities. We believe in ourselves. We're going to take on the world. We're also very independent. We're not dependent on any others or authority figures. We are self-thinkers, self-motivated, and we're very competitive. We want the really nice things in life, and we really want just as good, if not better, than others out there. And so that's why we get so excited when we start talking about all the things that senior housing has to offer. But our silent generation, our loved ones are really, they're thrifty, respectful, they're unassuming, and they're loyal. And so thrifty means they want what they can afford. They have a legacy to leave behind. They have savings accounts. They've invested well. And that is their legacy that they leave to their family. They're also very respectful. They don't want to waste anyone's time. They're appreciative, and they're unassuming. They are not arrogant, and they try to be as kind as possible. And they're loyal, giving you constant support and reassurance on how great you are. Can you kind of see how the silent generation really fed into the baby boomers and our self-assuredness, our independence, our competitiveness? We had a silent generation that was our cheerleaders, that was really showing us to really believe in ourselves. And so that's where you see a lot of breakdowns in conversations. And believe it or not, most people don't like change. They fear the change. And that is rightfully so in the silent generation. We're pointing out losses to them when we're sharing all of the wonderful things senior housing has to offer. And the conversation a lot of times goes like this. There are 5 stages of grief conversation. When you launch into telling someone all about senior living and what you found for them and how you are going to help them, right? Because we want the very, very best for our loved one. So we launch into this large conversation about all these things. And what happens is our loved one starts their grieving process. We've just told them life's going to change for them. Like we want it to change. And so denial sets in. And they start to share with you that I'm fine. There is nothing wrong with me. I just move a little bit slower. You have no idea what you're talking about. My doctor says this is normal. And so we start the denial process. Then we go into anger. How dare you tell me what I can and cannot do anymore? I raised you. You're trying to put me away in a home, aren't you? You don't love me anymore. You're just gonna stick me in the corner and forget about me. You don't think I'm useful anymore. And they start to do that. Look at all I've done for you. And this is how you treat me? Like, how dare you? So there is this anger and resentment that starts to set in the conversation on behalf of your loved one. You also get angry, right? You're having this conversation, you're trying to help them. Why are you being this way? And it becomes this kind of a tug of war and combative. When the anger subsides, bargaining sets in. I call it the what if I did this? And so a lot of times our loved ones will say, what if I hire someone to come in a couple of times a week? What if I move my bedroom to the den? What if? That's why I love calling the bargaining stage the what if stage. And it's really important that we listen to all these options, But a lot of times, we're like really adamant that we found the best thing because we've done so much research. We've become a very educated consumer, and we know all the pros and cons of staying at home with home care, and we know all the pros and cons of moving into senior living. And so we're trying to really force our agenda on them. Acceptance usually comes after bargaining, but when you've taken this approach, which is how most people take the approach of the conversation about senior living, it often comes with a lot of reluctance and one or more, both parties, not feeling very great about the situation. It's interesting. Years ago, I had a family who decided to take the approach that they were going to bring mom to lunch. And they brought her to lunch, but what they didn't tell her is that they had already rented an apartment and they'd already set it up and made it beautiful. They hired a designer to come in and design the apartment. It was absolutely stunning. And at lunch, after lunch, they showed her the apartment. She said, "Oh, it's very lovely." And they're like, "Great, it's yours. We've decided it's time to sell the house. We're worried about you living alone. This community is right in your neighborhood. You can still see all your friends." She was astonished that they had done that to her. And some families do take that approach. But what I'm about to share with you is a different way to approach that conversation. Now, Murph, we'll call her Murph, didn't speak to her family for 3 months. And sometimes that occurs, and we have to be prepared for that. But after 3 months, Murph really found that she knew many, many people that lived at the community, and she had great friends there, and she had a whole different life that was still her life. And so acceptance does come with some reluctance, and it may come with a little, I like to call it family feud a little bit. Over time, it does settle down when you take this approach. But I really want to tell you that this process can take a really long time. And you have to really want to help them work through the process in hopes that they make a move to senior living. Even with more open-minded loved ones, the process doesn't change. Even if you have somebody who's like, "You're right, honey, let's go take a look at senior living options. Let's go look around." You are always going to go and fall back on the denial process. In June of last year, my parents moved into an independent living building. This process was a long, long process. And we looked at many different options. We started at active adults. We started at freestanding independent living buildings. And my agenda was very much to get them into an independent living building that also had assisted living and memory care. So we wouldn't have to do multiple moves over and over again. And I wanted to be able to bring in some services into the independent living to help out my parents. When we started this process, it was very long and there was lots of conversations. And when we started the downsizing process of going through all the items in their home and gifting it to their grandchildren or who have homes they've started themselves, or talking about what we were going to donate, we got all the way up into the time. It was the night before. We had spent, my husband and I, weeks and weeks of going there, and also my daughter, and helping going through things and pack it. And the night before at 10 o'clock at night, I get a phone call from my dad, and he says, "I'm sorry, honey, but we're just not going to make this move. We're going to stay put." I was like, "Well, you've sold your house and it's closing. You can't stay there." And he's like, "Well, then we're going to buy a different house. But, your mama and I have really been talking about this, and we don't want to give up our stuff." And a part of me got really angry, and I took a deep breath and I started to say, "Well, you just can't do that, right? Because that's not logical. That doesn't make any sense. You'd lose all your money that you put down." And I started to take this really aggressive approach because you just can't do that. And then I just took a deep breath and just had a pause for a while to gather my thoughts. and really start asking him questions of like, what did they feel they were giving up? What did they feel was going to change so drastically? And at the end of the day, my father loved woodworking once upon a time, and he had woodworking tools when he had a shop, but he still had the tools. And it has been years since he's been able to really create beautiful cribbage boards or quilt stands or tables. I mean, he just loved to do that stuff. And he also had a beautiful gun collection that he loved very much, and a beautiful gun safe, because he, grew up on a farm and he loved hunting, and he went hunting quite a bit when I was younger and he was younger. But he said to me, I don't want to give up my woodworking stuff, and I don't want to give up my gun collection, which is valid. He sees himself as a handyman, a woodworker. He sees himself as a hunter. And those possessions aren't just possessions, they're a part of who he is as a person. And so he had to take a deep breath and start talking about, well, doing some kind of remembering of the times he's gone hunting and the different stories of us together and the different things that he's made with all his tools. He made me as a child a beautiful wooden rocker for my baby dolls, and it's been passed down through generations to generations, and now it's with my grandchildren, and it will be passed down to their children. And we started talking about all of those things, and then I just simply said, when's the last time that you went hunting? When is the last time you created a beautiful work of art out of wood? And he said, yeah, I can't do that anymore, but I don't want to give it up. So when you think about having these conversations that get super complicated, you have to think about, this is who people see themselves as, and you're trying to change that. And we worked through the process. My son is now the proud owner of a beautiful gun collection and a bunch of woodworking items for him to create beautiful tables, which he has. He's created a beautiful table. And I digressed and tell you that story because, it is a long process. You are asking somebody to change, 60 years of how they've lived into to live a different way. Life is changing. Getting older, we all change. I remember a time where you could just hop out of bed and take off. Now I hop out of bed and everything hurts. So as we age, things change. And it really is a grieving process. You are losing stuff that you have your identity attached to. You're losing your home that you raised your family in. And someone's telling you that you can't do that anymore. And it becomes challenging. So I want to share with you all a little bit different of approach on how to start the conversation, how to bring your loved one into the conversation so that when you get to acceptance, it really isn't where both parties feel like they're damaged in some way because it was such a trying process to get there. And if you've already started down the conversation and they've got now where they absolutely refuse to move in, it's okay. You can take a break, pause, and then take this approach with them. And it's 5 steps on how to really start the conversation that makes them a part of choosing. You, just like me, do not like to be told what to do. We like to have options and choices, and we want to be in charge of our own destiny, and so does our loved one. So I want to start with step 1, which is remember when you. We need to acknowledge our loved ones' accomplishments in life and things that they've done so far. And we need to sit down and we need to take a wonderful trip down memory lane, knowing that where the conversation is going to end. But we need to also ask them, what are some of the other things that you've not yet accomplished that you want to accomplish? Or what are some things that you wished you would have done? When I have the opportunity to sit with families. My favorite is when whole families come in and sit down at a community and start talking. Recently, I sat with a mother and daughter, and I learned all about her mother's accomplishments. Her mother was quite accomplished and quite the world traveler. And when I asked her, what's the one thing that you didn't get to do that you still really would love to do? It was go to Antarctica and see the penguins. So there are things on all of our lists that we still want to accomplish. We still do. You know, if you look at lots of folks out there at 90, they learn a language or they go on a trip of a lifetime. What is it that your loved one still wants to do, that still really, has something left to give? This allows you to start the conversation for them to actually see that you see them as a person. You recognize their contributions to life and that they still have the ability to have impact. They still have a purpose. They are still living and breathing and have options. So you must always start the conversation of remember when. It is a beautiful conversation to acknowledge everything. There's laughter, there's tears, there's joy. And then you pause the conversation and go into what are some of the other things that you still want to accomplish. It gives such a moment of you as the adult child, if this is for your parents, seeing them as a person. They feel seen and they feel heard, which is so critically important when you have all this worry and concern about them living at home and you really want them to move into senior housing. Okay, so that's step one. Take a trip down memory lane and really acknowledge them as a person and find out what's most important to them that they still want to do. Step two, now ask them what's holding them back from accomplishing that. It could be for my mother. She has a horrible arthritis in her knees. It's walking is very, very painful. So you got to talk about what is holding you back from doing those things. If you have a loved one that is incredibly heavy in the denial stage, you have to sometimes prompt this conversation. Mom, you seem to be really struggling coming down the stairs this morning. What's going on? Remember your tone of voice. Most kids, we're frustrated with our parents. And so our tone of voice doesn't always come across in a concerned, empathetic way. So make sure that step one, you acknowledge all their contributions in life and ask them what more they want to do. Then you ask them what's holding them back from doing that. Typically, that's when the ailments will come into play. You seem to be struggling. If they're in denial, start it with you seem to be struggling with what's going on. Have a sincere voice of concern. Get them talking about what's not working in their bodies. If they're anything like my parents, we could spend an hour on all the things that are not working the way they want them to work in their bodies. And what are they doing about it, right? Step three is utilize the information that you've learned, right? What is it that they still want to accomplish? What do they want to do, right? Is there a language they want to learn? Is there painting they want to do? Is it they want to get a degree in something? Get them to an acceptance on help in the conversation. When you get them to say, those are the things I want to do, like, great, then let me help you. Get them to say, yes, they need help to get there. That's the gateway to the conversation about to move into senior housing. So you definitely want to make sure that you spend a lot of time in the remembrance phase. This isn't a sit down, this is what you're doing conversation. This is a sit down and take that trip down memory lane. Really see them before you get to step three. and you get them to acknowledge in step 2 some challenges that they're having that they can't do. And if they could solve those challenges, maybe they possibly could do. And then utilize what they really want to do to open that conversation up. Step 4 is let them know that you do want to help them. So let's do some research. Let's see what's out there. With my mother, like I shared, her knees are very bad. And so one of the gateway conversations was, if you want to be able to travel to England and stay in I can't remember the show off the top of my head, but she wants to be able to stay in this castle over in England and get a full experience, English experience. Well, to be able to do that, we got to work on your knees. To be able to work on your knees, you need to be able to be someplace where you can do physical therapy every day, right? That was the step that we took. So you want to help them do research and see what you can do to find out how to help them accomplish the things in life they still want to accomplish. Step 5 is you come up with options and you present your least favorite option first, and you end with your favorite option. Tone of voice is actually very important here as well, because you don't want to, be overly excited about one and not too excited about the other. You want to make sure that you present all the options and get great feedback on each of those options from them. You need to make your parent or your loved one a part of this process as much as possible. Okay. So the 5 stages conversation of grief, kind of, no matter what approach you take, no matter if it goes smooth and you think, wow, this wasn't as hard as she said it was going to be, or as challenging as it seemed to be, and it flows wonderfully, you are going to come to the 5 stages of grief. You will get the, maybe I don't need senior living. Maybe I jumped the gun here. Maybe I should just go with some home care coming in a couple of days a week. Maybe this was just too quick. You need to keep reminding them of what they want out of life, what's left for them to contribute, right? Keep bringing them back to the why you're having this conversation. It's about them and their next chapter and what they want to accomplish. Anger will then set in. Be angry with them. Don't get angry at them. Get angry at the situation that they're currently in, that you're both in. Life is not fair. We age, we get older, things break down, they fall apart. Get angry at that, but do not let the anger be attached to you, and don't put anger back at them. And the bargaining, absolutely explore all options in the what if phase that they present to you. It's just critically important that we respond to the bargaining with the what if questions. Well, I think that's great, Mom and Dad, but what happens if, the person coming in to support you, what happens if something happens at night? What happens if, you forget and leave the stove on again? What happens if? Put those questions out there. Put them out there, and don't provide solutions. They are capable of providing the solutions themselves. So give the what if and wait for them to respond. I talk to a lot of salespeople in senior housing, and a lot of times they give multiple choices. And what I teach people is stop giving multiple choices to people. Ask the question. Pauses are okay. Let them really think about the what ifs, and then let them process what they would do with those what ifs. They need to be a part of solving the problems, not being told how to solve the problem, right? And then acceptance, explore the senior living options together with a focus on how it fits into their goals. Ultimately, what is important out of them, to them? What's important to them? After all, what's important to us is that they're someplace safe and that they have joy. And that's one of the things I love about the Arbor Company, is that we are focused on the joy and safety of the people that live in our communities. It is about what brings them joy. And that should be the approach that you take with your loved ones as you are starting this senior living conversation. Now, there is a stigma. There is a great stigma that lies with senior housing in general. And that stigma is something that you do have to overcome. And it's more stigma with assisted living than there is independent living, but yet a lot of misconceptions out there of what they are. The biggest issue that you have with your loved ones, especially if they have lots of friends, is what will people think about me if I live there? So you really do have to engage in senior living communities with them for them to be able to understand what it is that they have to overcome. In other words, they're full of old people. They're full of people who don't remember their name. These are all things that I've heard from seniors. I don't want to live with these people who don't remember their names. Well, that would be a memory care community, not necessarily an independent living and assisted living community. So you do have those stigmas and misconceptions that you will have to overcome. And it's challenging. The world has not made it easy for seniors to age with grace and beauty and live fulfilling lives in communities that can support them to still have accomplishments and do the things that they want to do in life. And it's really important that you focus a lot on life is not changing because their address changed. The person that they are, the purpose they have in life can still be fulfilled no matter where they live. So to recap our conversation on the 5 steps, go down a remember when. Remember when, see them as a person, see them as the accomplishments that they have contributed. It's interesting because I recently was at a community and I was speaking to the entire staff at the community. And I asked them, what made the residents that we served the greatest generation of all time? You've often heard that the silent generation is the greatest generation of all time. And it was really interesting because I think it took them aback of what makes them the greatest generation. Because you hear that all the time. People say that it's the greatest generation, it's the greatest generation. But have we ever stopped to say, why is it the greatest generation? Remember that the people in front of you were the firsts. They were the first to put a bikini on. They were the first to put a pair of pants on. They were first woman to go to work. They were the first woman to go up for rights and look at the gay pride. And you look at the different accomplishments, Martin Luther King Jr. Look at the different things our first generation has done. We need to acknowledge those accomplishments of our loved ones and often talk about them. But when you want to really focus on getting them into a community that's going to focus on their joy and safety and see them as a person that still has a lot to contribute to life and a purpose, then you need to start with the remember when. And then you need to ask them what is important to them. What do they still want to accomplish? What do they want to do? Probe, because sometimes my mother, she giggles and says, I'm an old woman. What are you talking about? I'm an old woman. What do you mean? What do I have left to accomplish? What do I want to do? But I keep probing to really dig deep and to learn what is most important to them that they still want to do. And then you take that conversation and then you ask them what is holding them back from doing that. You need to get them into the conversation of acknowledging what is ailing them, what is wrong, and what they need help with. Then you take that conversation and say, let me help you. Let's do some research. Let's find out how we can make these things happen for you. And then you sit down and you present options and you make them a part of the conversation. And that is how you start this journey. But remember, in a recap, no matter how easy it might be for you, because some people it is, you will always end up going through the 5 stages of grief. There will always be denial. There will always be anger. There will always be bargaining before you get to acceptance. And that's what I have to share with you all on having that conversation with your loved one about senior living and how you can maybe paint it in a different light. Melissa?
Well, that was fantastic. Very well done, well spoken. You had examples. And I think the best examples are the ones that you're giving within your own family. That to me, truly, when you have a product, right, you want to know that the person who's selling you that product or telling you about something that they've actually tried it and done it. And you certainly have done that and then some, and are able to share that knowledge with all of our viewers. And we are so fortunate because of it. So thank you for that. This is a great time, guys, to get your questions in for Wanda. Obviously, she has a lot of experience with this, sees it every day at work and then on the personal side of things. Wanda, I really liked the example you gave about your father. I'm wondering if there's a way that, you give us these great tips. I'm wondering if there's a way that you and I could do a quick reenactment of what this should look like. So putting all the pieces of everything you just gave us here today together and sort of a conversation. So we can say, I'm a mother and you're maybe the daughter, and I don't want to move into independent living. My house is sort of falling apart around me, and we're having to work extra hard to just take care of the upkeep. I've, had a career. I love traveling. And I'm telling you right now, as my daughter, I don't want to move into this. This is not something I want to do. I know it would be the best for me, but I just don't want to do that. What would be the first step you would take with me?
The first step I would take with you would be to actually ask you, what are some of the greatest accomplishments? But I would take you down memory lane. We
Yes.
would definitely go down memory lane. And then what is one of those accomplishments that you really loved?
So we can just say that, well, we'll just say, for example, I was a teacher. I was a teacher for 30 years at one of the local schools, and I taught 5th grade.
Awesome. So, mom, we're going to role play here. So Melissa, you're going to be my mom. Mom, you had such impact on the early generation. You've really formed and shaped a lot of people. That must be, really hard not to have that impact every day. Is there something that you could do to continue to have that type of impact on the younger generation? Have you thought about that, Mom? Is that something that you're interested in?
It is something I'm interested in, but no, I hadn't thought of that. I mean, what would I do?
Well, if you have you interest, Mom, in the younger ones in preschool age, or do you really enjoy the elementary school age?
I think I'm going to stick with my elementary school kids. I have a lot of experience with them, and I really like that age.
Okay. What do you think how could you really impact them, do you think, Mom?
Well, I think I'm a pretty good educator. I think that over the years, I found that people really listen to me. Maybe my approach to teaching seems to be one that works, and I seem to get the most out of my students.
I think, Mom, what we need to do is really look at how you can continue to do that. Would you mind if I go look around and see what I can do to really help bring that to life for you?
I think that actually might sound pretty good. I mean, you want me to move out of my house. But where would I go, and what would I be able to do, in my new home? What would I be able to do there that would be impactful?
Yeah, I think, Mom, maybe let's pause the conversation about you moving out of your house and let's really look at how you can feel really engaged and really help this next generation coming up in the elementary school years. I do think, Mom, you taught me a lot, and I think you have a lot to offer that age group. So if we pause that conversation, let's find a community or a school that we can get you involved in again.
Okay, so now we'll pause on that conversation. And so that was a great redirect, right? And that's exactly what you were talking about, Wanda. So great redirect. And now the follow-up to get that redirect back to senior living, then what would be the next step there? That was, I thought, great, by the way. So this is Wanda's just basically showing all of you guys how to utilize the tips that she gave today. So what's the next step?
The next step then would be to go back to mom,
Yeah.
Melissa, and share that you found some senior living communities that have some incredible intergenerational programs that she is going to be able to really impact this next generation that's coming up. There are senior living communities out there. It's really important that when you're looking at senior living, that you understand what's important to your loved ones so you can match the senior living community for them to be able to have growth. So intergenerational programming would be key to you, mom.
That was amazing. That's what I had hoped to get. Like I was waiting for it and then it came through and I'm like, it's so perfect. Well, that's awesome. Okay, good, 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 good. So I hope that that helps a little bit. You know, we could talk about it, but then seeing it in play and then you see sort of the resistance and then how she was able to just really finesse that conversation in a way that then mom becomes interested in. So very nice job. We've got a few questions in, so let's go ahead and get to those. Wanda, go ahead and take a drink. You've been busy. So we have a first question from Jody, and Jody wants to know, she said, thank you so much, first of all. Do you have this information in an article? Now, Wanda, this might be a good chance to sort of, discuss the Arbor website because a lot of this is actually on there.
Yes, it is. The Arbor Company started, I believe, in 2016. We were one of the first that really started writing blogs and articles and creating lots of content to help families. And so there is a vast library out there on our website to be able to find this stuff. And believe it or not, I'm happy to write this all up and work with our team to get it up on the website as well. But there are so many other ways to do things. And yes, it's all listed out on the Arbor Company's website.
Awesome. And another way to find it maybe a little faster too, because there is a lot on the website. If you want to Google the Arbor Company and then come up blog, that will pull up all of our blog information. It's probably the fastest way that you can get there within seconds. So Jody, I hope that that helps, but we do really have a lot of information. It's not just to talk about the Arbor Company. We just have so much wonderful information that we are able to share through those blogs that have been built over the course of time. So I hope that that helps. Renee says, how do you help a couple, one of whom is very healthy and youthful, and the other of whom is in decline? The healthy one insists that they both are not ready for senior living. So this is kind of a little bit of a catch-22, right?
Yeah. And she's right. They're both not ready for senior living. No one is ever ready for senior living. And I think that is a word that we get hung up on. They're not ready. They're not ready. Again, you have to take it back to what's important to them and what they still want purpose to do. You have to bring life to the one that is not aging as quickly and declining as quickly. You have to find what that sense of purpose is and what they want to do. And then you also have to talk about how it benefits the one that is declining quicker and really could use the benefits of that. And you really need to explore different options. And, I'm a huge fan of senior living. I prefer it over home care all the time. I can give you a million reasons why. But sometimes this journey has to start with home care and then it progresses into senior living. But you really got to go to be able to sell them, and I use the air quotes, on senior housing. You have to bring it to life for both of them. They see senior housing as a place where old people go, and you're telling them they're old. You have to show them how they can still have life. My mom is not a super engaging person, but my father loves people and he loves the talk. And one of the ways we got him engaged, which, by the way, my mom is aging much faster than my dad is. My dad still walks every day. He walks the dog. He has found adapted devices to keep his life going and as fulfilling as possible. One of the things that really got him engaged in the community was all the men's programs that the community has that they are at. And they have veterans programs, and he's very proud of his veteran status. And he has impact with the others. They get to reminisce and tell their stories. And he's become pretty well known with the staff because he figured out where the staff takes break, and he goes in there and has break with the staff and talks to the staff. So you have to really take a look at what is purposeful and important to your more able-bodied loved one, and bring that to life for them inside the community. And sometimes it is baby steps. Sometimes it's home care before you get into senior housing. It's one step at a time, but it's critical that you actually find the community that can bring it to life for them. You have to be very specific in what you need that community to show them. You have to be specific in the people that they need to meet. And you have to make sure that that community can bring the people in that do live there to meet him so that he can see life through their eyes there, and not this stigma that I talk about that senior housing has about it.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add to Renee is that the Arbor Company, and I believe there are other companies that do this as well. And this is again where you have to go and search and find what's going to be the right fit. Where the option is there for independent living, assisted living, and then memory care all under the same roof. So mom could be in an apartment in independent living. Dad can be in a if it's assisted living where he just needs a little bit of help, you can get that all under the same building. I talked to a woman at one of our communities down in Texas who was in the independent living because she could no longer take care of her husband who had dementia. And he was in memory care. So she was able to kind of have her life and be the wife. She said, I could just finally be the wife and not have to worry about being the caretaker. I love it here. And then I can go see, my husband any time of the day and visit with him and be with him and know that he's getting the care that he needs. So just another potential option for you.
Yeah.
Another one from Anonymous, Wanda's tone is so patient and caring. I often feel at wit's end in trying to talk to my dad. Wanda, it is not easy, right?
So I'll tell you, I'll be true transparency here. Going through that situation with my parents, multiple times, my husband elbowed me or pinched me when I was on the phone with them to shake his head. And then he would say, mute the phone. And I would mute the phone and he would say, remember what you do for a living. Remember your compassion. Remember your empathy. We are all aging. We are all going to be there someday. How do you want somebody to speak to you? How do you want somebody to treat you? That is what you have to remember.
Yeah. And easier said than done. I know. Believe me, I
Trust
know.
me.
Wanda knows it is. And Wanda, so this is now digging in a little bit more personal for you. So, your husband's kind of nudging you a little bit, but then how do you sort of capture that within yourself to then kind of restart the conversation before the annoyance or whatever it happens to be, the negative feeling starts to take over? What are you personally doing that maybe you could pass along to help others?
It's the pause.
Okay.
It's very much taking a very needed deep breath, like in through your nose, out through your mouth, deep breath. And it's pausing. It's pausing to say to yourself, this is going to go sideways if you don't watch your tone. This is going to go sideways if you don't really focus on what's important to them. Yes, in full disclosure, I am an only child. And that's not like I have a lot of siblings to help me. And I lived out of state for a very long time. And in 2020, I had to move back home. My adult children were spending so much time taking care of my parents. And they have small children of their own that they're trying to raise and jobs they're trying to hold down, that I had to move back home and start picking up some of that. And it can be very challenging because, when my mom wants something, she wants it and she wants it right now, right? They absolutely want it right now. And so you have to okay, well, I still work a full-time job. Can I do that on Saturday? Can I squeeze that in Saturday for you? So I want to show her the respect. But it's really about taking a deep breath and giving them options. So like when my mother calls me and says, I need this and I need it right now, deep breath. Okay, mom, what's so important about it right this second? Like ask the clarifying questions of what is so upsetting or dire at that moment, and then take them down a path of the what if. Well, what if, I got Gabe to go over there on Tuesday after Paisley gets on the bus for school, or can I come Saturday and let's make a day out of it. I'll take you to lunch on Saturday while we do that. So it's really about um, giving them options to choose from, right? In a perfect world, it always works, right? But sometimes it just doesn't. I mean, life is not perfect. We're human beings that get angry and frustrated. And after all, they are my parents, right? I remember being raised. I remember some of my own childhood traumas that I get mad about. And we all do that. But at the end of the day, imagine yourself being, 75, 85 years of age. Life has changed. And you just want people to see you. You want people to hear you, and you want to still have purpose. And we have to remember that when we have those conversations. The tone of how you speak to them is critically important.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And then, for that quick second before you respond, while you're taking that pause, put yourself in their shoes.
Mm-hmm.
How would you respond to the way you're about to respond to your loved one?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent stuff, Wanda. Okay, so we've got a comment here from Anonymous. It's easier when the parent is cognitively okay. However, discussions become difficult when they are in the throes of dementia, and that is absolutely true. We believe in aging in place, so let dad stay at my brother's home well into his 90s. When his dementia got worse, he no longer had the ability to engage in denial and accepted whatever my brother said. At that point, we moved him into memory care. And yes, this is going to look a little bit different for everybody, but Wanda, maybe a tip or something you can share for those who have parents who are maybe in the early stages, or kind of the moderate dementia or memory decline at this point.
I am a very big advocate of not keeping them at home. And I know that that's probably not something that you want to hear. And the reason being is that even in the early stages, the Arbor Company has something called the Bridges program, and there are other senior housings that have similar. But what I really like about our Bridges programs for that early stages of dementia is how well it keeps you and your brain engaged. If you don't use it, you lose it. And so the more you can use it and the more you can be engaged, and yes, they're going to be mad at you. I'm sorry, there's no other way around it. But what you'll find is that over time, they're no longer angry at you. They love you. They absolutely love you. You could not do anything to them that would cause them to not love you. And so for their own good, when it gets to a certain point, you have to make those decisions. You are honoring them. The way I look at it, I am honoring my parents by making those decisions that are tough on them. Should it get to the point, my mother, we're in the neurologist appointments now. We're doing all those things right now. I'm not going to put that stress on my dad, right? I'm going to make those decisions because he's not going to be capable of making them because he loves her too much, right? I love her too, but I know what's best for her to continue to cognitively try to thrive when she's highly engaged with people who understand the disease and its progress and how to work with folks. So I'm a big advocate of, yes, they're going to get mad at you. Just know they're going to get mad at you, but over time that does go away.
Gotcha.
And you are appreciated.
Excellent. And then we just had a comment. I think I may have missed something. The 5 stages are denial, anger, bargaining, acceptance. And I had to look up the other one. Let's see. Isolation, I think, is one of them. We're talking about the 5 stages of denial, depression, acceptance. So denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance is what we're looking at. And yes, if you were in this situation and you're trying to help a loved one, this is probably what you're going to be dealing with. So a comment here from Anonymous. Yes, we tried home health, but that was unreliable. Staff would not show up, etc., or sat and worked on their own projects. that's really frustrating. I mean, you're paying somebody a pretty penny to come and help your loved one, and they're just not getting the care. If I was your best friend and I was telling you this, Wanda, what would you say to me?
I would say to you that you tried it and it didn't work, and you need to find a senior housing community that can help you. When you have, my parents, I call them young seniors. They present very, very young, but their ailments are great. And so you might need to try some different things when you have the more able-bodied or look more able-bodied than what they are. So when I say, sometimes you might have to try home care in the what if game, right? However, don't do it for long periods of time, and don't do it if the ailments are great, right? You want to be able to have consistency in home care. Some are great and some are not consistent. And so you then have to make some tough decisions. If you can't get them on board by going and doing this route, then you do have to love them enough to make tough decisions and put them into a senior living community.
Yeah, yeah. And just a comment from Erin. And again, thank you for just sharing your thoughts with us. Says, my mom is definitely independent and strong-willed. I am so grateful for these tips to have this conversation with her. And again, Wanda, you and I had this conversation as we were preparing for this webinar, that people don't know what they don't know, and they're doing the best that they can. And this, what you were kind of showing us today, this is really a skill set. It's a skill set that you learn. It's just, as you mentioned, the whole redirecting, people sometimes do that when they're raising children, but this is a whole other ball game. You're trying to redirect for somebody who, is a full functioning adult, and they don't want to be told what to do because they are an adult. They have things a certain way that they like, they want to keep it that way. And then you're just trying to help them help themselves. And so there's definitely a skill set involved here. And I'm so glad that you all have recognized that and that Wanda has brought this to the table to help all of you with your loved ones. We are getting up to the top of the hour. If you guys have any more questions for Wanda, this is a great time to slide them in. Wanda, any final parting thoughts for our audience today?
Just that aging is not easy, and caring for someone who's aging and their health is declining is not easy, and not to be too hard on yourself. Not to be hard on yourself, that if you screw up and get angry, you can always reset. Always take a deep breath, pause, and go back and reset the conversation. It's not always a one and done.
Yep. Agreed with all of that. Well, this is the first time we've actually had this conversation as part of our webinar, where you could actually ask the questions. And we're so glad that you guys chose to be a part of our conversation today. We love that about these webinars. Wanda, excellent information today. And I know that this is going to help not only those who watched today, but those who will watch over and over and over again, as we have this link that will be put up on our website. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you all so very much for joining and listening and asking questions.
Yeah, and we got a final thank you from Anonymous at the end there for a job well done. So great information from Wanda today. And as I mentioned, if those of you watching, you certainly RSVP to be here. Guess what? This webinar will be available in your email that you use to RSVP starting tomorrow. You can take that link, you can watch it again, share it with friends, share it with family members. We certainly hope you were able to benefit from it here today. Also, if you enjoyed this webinar with Wanda, we've got so much more where this came from on our website. It's www.seniorlivinglive.com. We've got videos all about senior living, just a video vault full of them. They're available 24/7 on demand. And the best part, and we love this so much, they are all free. We thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today and for being a part of our conversation. Have a great day, everybody.